So talking about revelations, I came across a post yesterday, and they were talking about the whole amygdala with the frontal lobe versus your unconscious brain, and it was talking about how PTSD or an increase of PTSD causes the unconscious brain to shrink. Now, I'm not sure
Right.
it's actually going to shrink, or is it just disconnecting it? That's something
No,
I'm.
no, it shrinks. And the reality is that the other thing that happens
Mm,
every single day,
mhm,
when you go to sleep, your brain says, "Did you learn anything that you didn't expect that really like challenged you today?
mhm.
If you did, we're going to consolidate the information in your brain so it frees up more room to learn stuff tomorrow. If you went through today trying to be not learn anything, trying to be totally at ease, then we're going to take away part of your brain that learns new things and we're going to spread out what you know. And you keep doing that long enough, you lose the ability to learn new stuff. You lose the ability to embrace revelation.
So I want to go back to the rewiring of 0 to 3 and children being separated from their mother. Okay. So whether they're being adopted or whether they're being taken care of by the grandmother, if you are looked after by someone like your grandmother and you're sort of 0 to 3, does that affect the rewiring of the
Oh,
brain? Are
I
they
don't know
then
what you mean by
dropping
like
the.
your grandmother, but let me tell you, this was back like in the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
So there were all these orphans, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember whether they were Romania or where they were from,
Mm-hmm.
but there were all these orphans, and they basically got no touch. They, you know what I mean? Whatever was going on, it was whatever country it was
Mm-hmm.
in the Eastern Bloc, they had all these kids from all the strife, and these kids didn't have any touch. And then these Americans come to and this was about 60 Minutes. These Americans come to adopt them.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids all, 5, 6, whatever, they all had learning disabilities. They just all had issues. And they were all told the kid will grow out of it. Kids are resilient, they'll grow out of it. And the story in 60 Minutes was how, like, these kids weren't growing out of it. I don't know if they were like early teenagers or whatever. And they did brain scans, and there was spots in their brain that was just dark,
Wow.
like nothing. And these parents were trying to say we were defrauded, basically. We were lied to, that this kid is never going to recover that part of his brain. So if we're talking about kids who get zero touch, and that's the other thing is the boy who was raised a dog. So if you've ever read that book, The Boy Who Raised a Dog, he tells this amazing story of, like, I think I'm gonna just rough out some numbers, but it, a big picture. He's telling the story about this baby or this kid who's like 4 years old and is 24 pounds and cannot gain weight. They're hooking her up to tubes and everything. And the thing is if you're just an animal, if you're just, a body, you've put calories in, you're going to gain weight. She could not gain weight. And what the guy who wrote the book did was he held the baby or the kid and he touched her softly and spoke kind words to her. And she started gaining weight because in humans, there's a biological process that depends on words and touch, affirming and carrying words of touch. And that causes the hormone to be released that causes you to gain weight and everything. So what he was saying in this book is that when you have a kid and they put the kid like at 6 months or 9 months, they put the kid on the growth scale and they go, your kid is the 60th percentile for weight.
Mm-hmm.
They monitor that because if your kid goes under that, they know it's not getting words of touch and affirmation and you're abusing the kid. So that's what they're really doing is they're looking to say, hey, your kid's now the 50th. Why is your kid not gaining any weight? So from 0 to 21 years old, we are on a linear path of weight gain.
Okay.
Our body's building up. After 21, that means our bodies are falling apart. So, what would words and touch of caring and affirmation do to somebody who is older than 21?
Make them put on more weight?
Nope.
The
They're falling
opposite?
apart. They're falling apart.
If they're falling apart, you just said, I heard you say that if you touch them, then they're going to put on weight between,
Right.
baby.
Because their biological processes are working, not the effects, Sarah. I'm all every conversation is me taking you causes
Oh,
because
the
you love
biological.
effects.
Okay, so
You
we're going
love
down to the bio.
effects. You
So,
love effects.
so biologically, they will get worse then, yeah? It will exacerbate it.
No, if you touch and care, it does the biological process for repair. So what they found is that people who get caring touch and words of affirmation are sick less often and sick for a shorter amount of time. So when you see people getting sick all the time and sick for a long period of time, I guarantee you they don't have any social connection that is affirming,
Mhm.
whether it's physical or words. And that's why I've always been on this communication guideline. Like literally using communication guidelines heals other people. And everybody who opposes it wants people to not get well and not be healed and not repair. They're evil.
So back to the 0 to 3. When I'm trying to get to the bottom of, and thank you for explaining that. I'm trying to
I'm
get to
just saying
the
that there's things that can happen,
yeah,
especially 0 to 6, but 0 to 3. There are things that can happen that are going to be a bigger hurdle,
yeah,
not only physiologically, but structurally in the brain
yeah.
for how their thought process works. It can be a bigger hurdle. But other than the physio, I think structure stuff can always be fixed because our brain changes itself. However, dead parts of the brain, like you tape a baby's eyes shut, or you tape a animal's eyes shut, past 18 months or whatever, the brain never makes the connection. They're going to be blind, physiologically blind.
Well,
So
so
you can't tell me, oh, everything can be repaired if they're, no matter how they're treated the first 3 years. No, there's some things that do physiological damage and you just don't have the connection anymore.
okay, so touch is important. Now, going back to
Words and touch, words and touch.
words and touch, mother versus grandmother, taking
I don't
care of
think it matters. I don't think it matters to a kid. Matters
really.
to the mother, but I don't think it matters to the kid as long as the kid's getting touched. Because that's what this Dr. Dizzy taught the mom how to do it. But this girl was gaining weight with this stranger doing all the stuff.
Okay, so these people who are adopted, babies who are adopted, that feel like they're always looking, they're always missing. Why is that?
Because they are just floating.
What do you
They're
mean they're
floating.
floating? They go, I
They're
always know
back at that
something is
320
wrong.
or 160. They aren't taking control. Their ship is not sailing at all. They're either undocked, they either don't have their anchor down or they put their an anchor. That's it. All
So
these
we're
people want to
saying,
use adoption as an excuse like that. They're,
okay,
they're just perpetuating it on themselves. And that's great. But when they're hurting other people, then their unconscious is going to beat them up more. Then they're going to feel like, you see, because I was adopted, I'm worse off. No, you're adopted, and that's a struggle, and I get it. However, you hurting other adopted people is causing your unconscious brain to hurt you, and this now is on you. It's not on you being adopted. This part's on you, and they're never going to get healed from because they're deceived because now they're chasing somebody else as the cause of the problem when now they are the cause of the problem.
okay. So I think I want to sort of wrap up because I think we've got about 6 minutes. I don't want to hold you up. And this discussion
Sure.
could go on forever because I'm really passionate about understanding
Me
this
too. Me
mummy and
too.
babies, mummies and babies kind of getting, having a
Yeah.
better relationship is what I'm really about, John. I don't know if you've
Yep.
noticed that or not, but I'm trying to get that 0 to 3. Like, what's the optimum? If we had to pick an optimum, would that be the baby stays with the mother? Yeah. Or is that the baby, stays with the mother up to this time? I used to put Alex in front of,
Okay, so the optimum, I've taught this to people for years, for
yeah.
over 20 years. The optimum is the first 6 months, you want to minimize all the stress on the baby. Like if
Mm-hmm.
the baby has to sleep with you, the baby sleeps with you. You keep the baby in a room that's quiet and comforting. You give the baby attention, touch, all that. Because the first 6 months is like the major architecture of the brain is set. not the fine tuning, but the major, this is where kids can get wired to, I can't handle any tension at all.
Mhm.
We can all grow our attention, but the kid can get wired their brain to, you know what? The minute something's going wrong, I have to start screaming and everything. And that's why I'm like, these people who want, like, if the baby needs to sleep with you, the baby sleeps with you. I think that's great. 6 to 18 months is where all of the architecture, the rest of the architecture based on the first 6 months is now wired in. And so that's where you're really with the coping and everything. And I would still be stimulating that baby, and I would still be caring and comforting and trying to minimize the tension there. But it's not as important as the first 6 months. And then 18 to 3 years, what you're really doing is this is repetition. Like somebody should be sitting with that kid and just, how kids, I could sit with a kid and just, when I had my kids, I just sit there and just play with them because play is their work. That's how they're wiring the brain. And I would be doing this stuff 20, 30 times in a row, peekaboo or whatever, playing something because I'm actively helping them wire their brain. One of the things I did with my youngest is I'd read this article like, you will never be a concert violinist if you don't start playing at 4 years old because the connection between your pinky and your brain is the most important connection to be this great violinist. So you got to build that connection. So every day for even past 3 years, when I put my son to sleep, when I check and make sure he's asleep, I would press or squeeze every one of his individual fingers. So I'd squeeze his thumb and squeeze his forefinger. And I'd do that because what I was trying to do was teach his brain, this is where this connection is, this where this is. And I kept doing that. Well, he didn't become a pianist, but when he was like, I think he was 5, I think he was 5. He had a wireless controller and he was playing Super Mario Melee with a bunch of boys who were Eagle Scouts because we went to an Eagle Scout ceremony and he was wiping them out. Everybody's like, "How is this 5-year-old?" And it's because all his fingers. I'm like, "Well, I helped him learn how to use all his fingers so he could do a video game controller, but he didn't become a musician." So, but there are things like that you can do. You, that 18 months to a year, or 3 years is repetition, and that's where you just see it. Like you want somebody just sitting there and just repeating it, repeating it, repeating it, because the goal isn't for you. The goal is I'm trying to help this kid build this connection into his brain. And you only build it by repetition.
Okay, so that's up to 3. And then three
Yeah.
to seven, they go to school, and that's the end of that.
Well, then you're teaching them, then they're mirroring you. And that's the part where everybody, I think, really screws up
Yeah.
is it's like, because my oldest daughter used to get really upset. She went after her first teacher with a pair of scissors. She got so frustrated. And so what I used to do is I used to go, "Oh, I'm so mad right now. I'm going to sit down and think." And then I'd sit down and think. And then she started doing that when she really was mad. And it's like, you don't realize, like, past 3 years old, I say past 4 years old, your kids are totally unconsciously picking up all your habits and reproducing them. And so if you're a crappy person, guess what? Your kids are going to be crappy, at that age. And then I don't know, you talk to these teachers, "I don't know where this kid gets it." Oh, trust me. You just look at the other spouse and they're going, "Yeah, I know, I know." A kid is just a mini version of him.
So mummies and daddies have to be very well behaved and calm or expressive within a safe zone between those ages. Yeah. If the children are going to mimic them,
Whatever they do,
they're going to copy
they
them.
need to be okay with their kids doing that. And the biggest thing that wrecks parents and the reason they freak out and start losing their minds and even hating their kids is their own unconscious is killing them because they're going, and the teachers do this in school. How can you be mad at this kid for not doing this assignment when we had you do an assignment, in this training and you didn't do it? How can you do that? You can't. And now you're gonna get depressed. And that's what happens to these parents is they start having they want their kids to act a certain way, but they don't act that way. And so now they're confusing the kid. The kid's like, "Look, my unconscious says this is what you do, and you're trying to against my conscious to do the different thing, but now you're screwing me up, mom, dad." because I'm seeing two different things here. And now my brain is all over the place. And now I'm going to start acting out. Oh no, my kid's acting out. Yeah, guess what? And I always say the number one thing you can do, 80% of your kids' issues are coming from your marriage. That's what I tell all these parents. If you want to help your kid, the first thing to do is fix your marriage. Your
So
kid is vibing your marriage. If your marriage is stressful, the kid is your kid's starting to stress. And now I don't know how you're going to get the kid to be happy if the marriage isn't happy. Number one step.
okay, number one step. So then after this point, the child picked up on whatever behavior. So I guess they're moving more and more away from their own uniqueness, correct?
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
mimicking the parents, which is why you like to help the children sit through that Mr. Lenhart
Yep.
class so that they
Well,
can
no, that's
touch
for
themselves.
that's for kids who are ready to go through pre-synaptic pruning. We have another class called Steve's Garage that we have kids sit through earlier than that, and it's really to learn how not to become a fourth grader. At 10 years old is when all these kids learn to bully. 9 years old, they're great kids, and they want to. A 9 year old is motivated intrinsically inside by achieving some reward. If you say to the kids, "Hey, got a candy bar. What's the capital of this country?" and they guess and they're wrong, they'll guess again. At 10, they're extrinsically motivated to avoid a punishment. They lose all their creativity at 10 because they're like, look, I don't want to look like an idiot. So none of them will answer the question. Doesn't matter what you offer them. It's not worth it. Because if I get it wrong, everybody in class knows I'm wrong and I don't want to be wrong. So we have a whole thing that helps these kids stay creative and positive and work with other kids and don't become a 10-year-old. Basically stay at 9. We should have all stayed at 9 year old and been positive.
Is this the effect of school, getting them sort of punishing them with the red marks, or does this happen to every 10-year-old, John?
It happens to every 10-year-old because what happens, there was a great book called Superheroes in the Doll Corner. And this is a 40-year-old book, but this woman who was a kindergarten teacher decided that, she was going to teach her kindergarten class different. She was going to have, you know, stereotypes, male and female. She wasn't going to do any of that. And she documented her entire year being in charge of her class. And what she found out was your kids are getting socialized by other kids. Me as the teacher can only do so much. But when some kid walks in and walks up to a boy and says, "Hey, come here in the kitchen. We're gonna play. I'm the mommy, you're the daddy, and you just came home drunk." Where'd that kid? And I've talked to kindergarten and first grade teachers like they're like, "Oh man, if the parents knew what I knew about them, they would all be embarrassed." Because your kids, at kindergarten walk into school and play out everything that's going on at home. And so those teachers know everything that's going on in the house
So by
because the
10
kids
years
are
old,
playing it out with other kids.
so it's learned behavior basically, suddenly
Yep.
all coming to the
Well, they're
fore.
trying to sort it out. That's what I'm saying is you start telling your kid to do one thing and you do the opposite. Your kid's trying to sort it out. So they'll go and say, "Look at, I want to figure this out. You come home drunk and I'm the mom. Am I going to be nice to you? Or am I going to be mean to you? Because my mom said to be nice to you, but she was mean to daddy last night. And so I want to try it out. Let me see what I end up doing."
Okay, so now it's experimentation to see what goes on
Yeah.
around them. Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And then one final point, but we're 4 minutes in. At some point, I'd like to talk about the whole big picture, small picture, and when that and how that comes about. Like,
Sure.
what causes that? Yeah,
Sure. We can talk about that. Yeah.
we
Another
can
time.
talk
That's a
about
long
that.
discussion.
And a wrap up of, I think there's another 3 points on unconscious confrontation. I don't know if you are willing to share that or not.
Yeah. I would be willing to share them.
Well, thank you, John, for your
Thank
time.
you. Great talking.
Yeah, be good. Have a lovely
You too.
2 weeks ahead. Yeah.
You
Oh, and
too.
by
Take
the
care.
way,